So we've been flying the Power2fly Titan for a little over a year now, and man has it been fun and been a tremendous machine. But now it's time for an upgrade. Today's video we're going to show you our new toy. It's a Power2fly Titan XL, the 150 cage, a 140 prop, and a different gear reduction on the Moster 185 for a lot of extra power. Stay tuned. Okay, so we got everything out of the box, out of the packages. This is going to be your main frame, as you can see here. And then we laid all of our parts and pieces out. We've got our large, extra large harness. We have our hoop with the net already attached along with the bag. We've got our Pliers exhaust system coming up. The Helix prop, and like I said earlier, this is a 140 prop. So a lot of extra thrust. We went with a purple color this time, and you'll see the arms and everything here. Aluminum carabiners, all our little pieces to assemble. You'll see a nice t-shirt, and you also see our spars there. So now that we've got all our parts and pieces laid out, let's let the assembly process start. What we're going to start with is actually going behind Power2fly, and we're going to start pulling bolts out, and we're going to loc-tite them. So anything that holds the engine mounts, even the gas tank, we're going to remove one bolt at a time, and we're going to put loc-tite, not permanent loc-tite. We're going to use the medium strength loc-tite, but we're going to make sure that all these bolts have loc-tite and or torque down to specs. And then we'll start adding parts and pieces to our frame. Stay tuned. Although some may consider the gas tank bolts not a critical point, the loc-tite, what we're doing here is just backing these bolts out by hand. We're not taking them completely out, and we're going to put a drop of loc-tite right here on the threads, and then we'll run the bolt back down in. And obviously we don't want anything coming loose, vibrating loose over time, and we definitely don't want that bolt to go through the propeller. Even though there's two other bolts that's holding the tank on, a bolt through the propeller could be catastrophic. And so we want to make sure that we use loc-tite on all of these critical points. We're using a 5mm Allen key set to remove these bolts. And like I said earlier, we're only removing one bolt at a time. We're going to put some loc-tite on them and reinstall them and tighten them back down. After we got our engine bolts and gas tank bolts loc-tited, this is called torque paint. And what we're doing here is just running a little bead between the frame and the screw. Once that paint dries, it'll leave a permanent mark right there. And so when you're pre-flighting your engine, it's easy to look and see if that paint line is broken or if the lines do not line up, then we know that that bolt has moved. And once we got them to where we want them, we're just more concerned that they haven't loosened up. And it's a real easy way to do a quick pre-flight on critical components with this torque paint. I think we picked this up off of Amazon, bolt mark, and we did it in the orange color. Yep. Our next step is to install the exhaust system. Jacob has the Pliers exhaust, and what we're going to do is we backed off a couple of nuts that came on the frame already. They actually have a pretty cool bronzy color to them. And so he's going to slide the exhaust into place and set those exhausts up on the studs, and then he'll run those brass nuts back down on there, and that'll kind of hold it in place. And you'll notice here we're going to have to get this lined up right there on this exhaust, and then we'll hook in our springs here in just a second. So as he gets these nuts attached and tightened down, and then we'll be right back to show you how to install the springs on your exhaust to hold it tight to the head. So as you tighten these bolts down, you'll notice we've got a 10mm socket on an extension, and you see the rubber wants to turn with you there. So what we're going to do is take a pair of regular pliers, and we're going to grip that rubber mount so we don't torque and twist and tear that up. And as Jacob holds it tight there with the pliers, he's going to run that nut down, 10mm nut down, good and tight. All right, so that catches that. And if you notice here, this is a wear and tear item on the Vitarazi Moster 185s. This is like a brass bushing that the exhaust seals up against, and after so many hours that bushing is going to need to be replaced. And so you'll see what that looks like there. We're going to line this pipe up and get it on this bushing, and then go and install these springs. Okay, Jacob's going to show you how to install these springs. We've installed one over here on the corner. If you see, we take a piece of twine, paracord or something, and grip it. It kind of helps that you have a second set of hands holding the unit. I've got my foot right here and holding it at the top of the unit there, and he's pulling. And what we want to do is make sure that we get these things on here and kind of crisscross them. So he caught one over here and then diagonally went over there, and then we're going to catch this one and go back over to the other side. And notice he's got his string there, and going to hold this unit nice and tight, and he'll pull that down. I'd recommend using eye protection to do this in case something does spring away. You don't want to take that to the eyeball. Let's catch this last one. I know there's other ways of doing it. This is pretty simple and pretty safe way of handling it. There we go. Alright, so that caught all of them right there. I'm going to make sure this thing is shifted to where it's lined up, and we'll be in good shape. Our next step is going to be assembling our swing arms, and I want to show you on our Titan that's already built. If you'll notice on our arm, there's a flat side, and there's a side there that has a groove or a lip around it. That lip side is going to go to the inside, and what that does is it's going to go and right up against the grooves in this bushing. But you're going to notice, let me start over here, this will be the left hand side of the paramotor, and you'll notice that this big portion of the arm is screwed to the inside, so the smaller arm here is on the outside. This shifts to the right. You'll notice where our carabiners connect that it also shifts to the right, and you'll notice down here, and this is where our harness connects to the swing arms, it actually shifts back to the left, to the outside. Now look over at our right arm. Here again, this arm is on the outside, is shifted to the far right. Notice our carabiners is shifted to the far right, but you'll notice that our harness connection is shifted to the inside, back to the left. You'll also notice the size of the bushings or spacers, right? So this is a much smaller bushing and spacer on our left arm, and a bigger bushing and spacer on the right. So what we're doing with these arms is we're shifting everything over to the right hand side, because this is a belt driven engine, and the torque that's produced by a belt driven engine, right, this offsets the torque of the engine. And by having everything shifted to the right reduces torque, but then our harness of course has to recenter back to the left, and that's why our harness connections are on the opposite sides. You see where our carabiners connect here. So these arms are a right and a left. This is actually the right side arm because of the way this groove has to go to the inside. And so what we're going to do is build these arms on the table with the supplied screws, and we're also going to put torque paint on them as well. And so once we get these arms built on the table, as Jacob's assembling here now, right, then we're going to show you how to bolt them to the frame. Stay tuned as we get these arms built. Alright, now that we've got these arms assembled, we've got this side in place. There again, you'll notice the thin spacer. The arms are all set to the inside. The harness, swing arms is all set to the inside where your carabiners attach. And then our front harness is all set to this. Now Jacob's got this arm he's going to show you with a thicker washer, thicker spacer. We're going to slide that bolt in. There goes a washer and a regular nut, and then we also have another jam nut that goes in behind it. It can be tricky to get your hands back there. Okay. You'll see here we've got the washer and one nut installed. He's going to take a
13
millimeter socket
and a 6 millimeter
and a 6 millimeter Allen wrench and tighten that down. Now you notice he's going to tighten that down. You're not going to lock it down. These arms have to move freely. So what we do is we tighten it and we move that arm up and down a few times, and then we'll retighten it, move this arm up and down a few times. You see it there, it's got a real slow drop to it by itself. Once we get it there, we're going to put this jam nut on the back side. And we're going to jam those two nuts together and keep that from backing off. Now this is something that we always pre-flight, and this is something that's kind of tough to put a torque paint on. And so we always grab these arms and we'll grab them and shift them from side to side. If there's any play in that arm, you'll notice it, and then we can come back and retighten these things. So it's definitely something that you want to pre-flight every time you fly. These arms have to articulate, but you don't want them so loose that they flop around, or if they have too much excessive side to side play in them. So he's got those arms bolted down. We're going to apply torque paint because these bolts here just bolt these arms together. We definitely don't want these coming loose, and we're going to apply torque paint here at the end. This, however, we're putting it in the different holes here depending on your weight range. So when you build an engine, you want to hang test this thing with you in it to make sure that you've got this where the carabiners attached in the proper holes. And based upon what we've done on our last Titan, we've stuck them in these holes, but we're not going to loc-tite them down quite yet until we do a hang test, just to make sure that everything is still the same. So Jacob just applied torque paint. We'll let that dry. That's just an easy way to pre-flight with that there. So after we got the arms installed, our next step is going to be installing the harness. And you'll notice up here there's a couple of bungs already welded to the frame, and our harness is going to attach up here. And then there's some Velcro straps, and then we'll tie it all in from there. Yep. Alright, we're going to attach this harness. If you notice here, this key ring is already installed on this shackle. We're going to slide this shackle up till it fits on this bung. And we're going to take our screw and run it through the shackle This thing just has simple threads, and it'll actually bottom out here. And usually your threads will be flush on this side. We'll grab us some needle nose pliers, and we're going to tighten this down here. Yep. And then you notice this key ring. This is a really important thing, that you want to make sure that you run this ring through the hole and kick it around just like you were installing a key on a key ring. And this is kind of like safety wire for a paramotor. And what this does, by locking it in, doesn't allow this screw to back out. Now here's another feature that I like. A lot of paramotors don't even have this system. They use just a strap at the top from the harness to the frame. And I really love what Power2fly does with the shackle and something that's welded to the frame. But we also still have a strap system here on the harness. So what we're going to do is loosen our strap up. And we're going to run it down through the shackle, around the frame itself, and back over. We're going to run that through the keyhole loop, okay? And then we're going to go back into our harness there. Right, Jacob feeds that back through. Right, he's going to set that, feed it back through the top again, back through the key loop again, and then back around. I hope you get to see all of this. And right back out the top again. So now we have double redundancy on how this harness ties into our frame. I definitely like this system a lot better than I've seen on some other paramotors on the market. So that takes care of the top portion of the harness. And of course, we're going to repeat that on the opposite side. Down here, we've got some things hanging from the harness with the little pulleys on them. This is for a speed bar system. So if you're flying a speed bar, this is where the line runs down through, and we remove those. There's also pulleys down here at the bottom of the harness, and you can pull this key ring out, pull the pin, and remove these pulleys as well. We take this stuff off just simply because we don't use a speed bar. It's just something else hanging in the way. Next, you've got a strap here midway down the harness, and we're going to undo that buckle all the way. We're going to feed that strap around the harness, feed it back through the buckle. Now we're not going to get this thing super tight, but you don't want it to have a ton of slack in it. If you'll see there, Jacob's probably got, I don't know, maybe an inch and a half, maybe an inch worth. Yeah, that looks good right there. Once he gets it through both the buckles, we're going to back feed it. So we don't want this thing coming undone, obviously. He's going to pull that tight and feed it back around. Once he feeds it back around and doubles that strap over, pull this out tight so you can see. What we like to do is take a zip tie. I'm going to run that zip tie all the way around. Zip tie all that down in place. And that keeps all that excess from flopping around. And then we're going to clip that zip tie off right there. Make that nice and neat. Perfect. All right, once we get this, I'm going to show you here on the harness itself. There's one long strap that comes from here out of our shoulder harness, and this long strap is hanging. Right, it's got also a buckle on it. We're going to come down here to the bottom, and this feeds on the outside of the harness. See how he goes around the chassis back through the buckle. And once he gets it there, we're going to back feed it to keep it from sliding out. And lock that into place. Now, if you can see here, Can't have this thing too tight because we have to be able to lift these shoulder straps up. And of course, they're adjustable, right, from there, so we can get in. So that takes care of all of that. Now, next step here on this harness, I'm going to show you where your carabiners tie in. And so you're going to have this end here where it's got a gray loop and a red loop, and we're going to feed that right through our brackets here on our swing arms. You'll notice that the gray loop here is where our bolt slides through, and there is a spacer there, a metal spacer, slides in the gray loop. And once we slide that back down in, you have to kind of work it in there. Probably helps if we loosen these bolts on the outside just a little bit.
Hold on.
Won't take much. We'll work that down and then slide our bolt through the middle of the spacer and through the harness. And then Jacob's going to use a 5mm Allen key to tighten that back down. As we said before, we're just going to hand tighten these down. We're not putting Loctite on them until we do a hang test to be sure that we've got these positioned correctly on our arms. You'll notice there's holes forward and aft there on the swing arm, so we can slide this block forward or aft depending on your weight, and that'll get that fixed. We'll go ahead and repeat this on the other side, and I do believe we'll be finished with the harness process as well. Stay tuned. All right, we're doing this harness and rigging it. For the part of the harness that comes up, this is a separate strap altogether, and all it is if we see this main strap that runs forward here, it's just looped around and back through itself, and you can see the slack right there. We'll pull out of it, and then this piece here pulls up, ties into our block. Okay, this part here where the red is going to fit on the front of our swing arms. Notice again we've got the shackle system with the key ring on it, and Jacob's disassembling that there. We're going to install that part of the harness at the front. While he does that, I'll show you here. This side over here has been attached, and you'll see that this is almost like where it can slide along the length of this strap here that goes up and ties into our carabiners, and we'll put carabiners on in just a second. So as Jacob has got this here, make sure this is flat and flush, and then make sure that the key ring obviously is on the side, not on this side, but on the side there where the key hole is at. And he's going to tighten that down. And once again, we're going to use a pair of needle nose pliers to get that all the way down. And once that is tight, we're going to run that keyhole through it. There again, please do not miss the important fact of running that keychain loop back through. That keeps that threads from backing out, and like I say, there's not much threads on the end of that shackle, and so you want to make sure that that thing has no way of coming loose, because this thing is locked in right there, that this cannot back out. Okay, so now he's got the harness complete there. He's going to show you here where our carabiners go, and they'll just clip in. These are aluminum carabiners that come with the Power2fly Titan. So now, there again, like I say, we're going to come back when we do a hang test, and we'll tighten these down and put torque paint on those as well. And we'll catch some torque paint here on these, because this is not going to come undone on the front as well. It looks like the harness is all, everything's looking good. So that gets us done with the harness. Our next step is going to be installing the hoop or the cage and the netting, and we'll turn this jewel around and show you how that goes. All right, our Power2fly comes with a really nice bag, and you'll see the hoop section there, and we're going to have 3 spars Jacob has the first main upper spar, and these things are directional, okay? So obviously they would fit in this way, depending on how you turn it, but that's not going to line up with our holes. Jacob has some clips there that has a push pin. Show that clip with a push pin through the middle, and of course that push pin is going to line up there with the holes there. Also, it's easy to note too that our little buttons here where the hoop ties in are going to go towards the rear of the machine. And so once we get that done, we got two side spars that slide in and also use the clips, and Jacob's going to slide that one in. Notice that our push pins here for our hoop is towards the rear of the machine. He's going to line the hole up, put the clip on that spar. Then our last spar goes in on the left hand side of the unit. Line the hole up and pop the clip in. Alright, that was pretty simple. This also goes to show you how you can break the unit down if you want to transport it. Here the net comes pre-installed on our hoop section, and we're going to separate these out. They're kind of sort of in order, and so when you grab them, don't get discouraged if it looks like a knotted up mess. There's just a way to figure out which piece is which, and as Jacob figures that out, and we'll install the hoop and the net. It's a real simple setup that they use to install the hoop with the push pins, and it just slides right down into place and make sure these pins click completely out. Alright, he's got the first piece there, going to slide in at the bottom. Now this is another critical point that we have messed up on before, is making sure that we get our netting out to the front of the spars. Let me slide around here, I can get him from the front. What you see is he is unfolding the cage, and we'll come here and line up our hoops, set it in. You're going to have to mash the push pin there, and then it'll slide together. Can you push down here on this, Jacob? Don't let it get your finger. Very good. Okay, you'll notice that the netting is all in front of the cage, so we're doing this right. We went with a black netting on this unit, and our last unit we ran an orange netting to match our arms, and found out that the color will fade eventually, and so we ended up replacing it with a black net. And so this go around we're just going to go with the black net as well. The colors do look really nice, and is a neat way to kind of customize your unit, but we really do love the titanium powder coated finish on these units, and they do a really nice job of powder coating the arms, and they have tons of colors that you can pick from. With Jacob sliding all these in, making sure that the push pins are clicking all the way in, and making sure that they pop out. An easy way, I run my fingers besides the back of the cage, and if I feel that push pin all the way out, then I know it's locked into place. And so it's just a real quick, easy way that you can pre-flight your unit. And of course these clips right here that hold the spars into place. Although they look really simple, they do the job and hold up really well. This is the end of the net, and you'll see Jacob has passed the string over the top of the cage there, and he comes down and clips it, and there's already a hole here where we tied our bottom strap in. So see, it's no tension on it there now. When we get to the other side of the unit, we've got some clips there, and you come with a tensioner. So once he's going to clip in there, and we're going to hook this tensioner over top of the frame. pull it down and tie it in to the supplied hole there at the bottom. And then it's just as simple as grabbing it and pulling it. And you'll be able to feel the tension in the net and get it nice and tensioned up. We recommend that obviously you want to fly with your net tensioned, but after you land and you post-flight everything, to release tension on your net to keep it from stretching over time. And that's something important to remember to do. All right. So that takes care of the hoop and the netting and the tensioner. We like the way that I want to make sure that you run it over the frame system here and not here. This has a little sharper edge on it. This has a really nice rounded edge, and so you're not going to rub your string raw right there. We also are going to get our pull start. If you notice up here at the top, we have our bracket here, and this is where our pull start ties in. And we'll get that pulled up, fed through the net. There's a little small carabiner that clips into place there at the top.
I can get it.
You can get it. It can be kind of tough looking on that net. Oh, you almost had it.
Yep.
That would go. All right, let's make sure that that's pulled outside.
There you go.
On that. You probably tug on this thing a few times and figure it out. We want this string to be on the inside outside of the net to make sure that we're not having anything getting tangled and bound up on that. On our previous unit, this mounting point was down below the net, which took away some of this, but you didn't get any leverage, and it was hard to reach up and grab this to pull start once you were strapped in the unit. And so they've moved this bracket up on the newer units, which we like a whole lot nicer, and you can get a lot more leverage when you're pull starting your engine. So that's worked out really nice. Also, you notice too, there's nothing here to bind on the cord. It's a straight shot right down into the pull start on the engine, so there's nothing rubbing on the line there as well. So that's really nice. All right, that takes care of the hoop and the cage. We're going to ease around here, and we have a spark plug to install. There should be a red plastic plug that's installed in the top of the engine. You're going to remove that, and that's what comes there to keep anything from getting inside the engine during transport. And we're going to thread this in. Do realize that the spark plugs have a crush washer on them, and that the very first time that you tighten this thing down, it's kind of going to have a funny feeling to it, and what you're doing there is actually crushing that washer down flat for the very first time. Now, if you ever do remove this spark plug and go to reinstall it again with the same washer, it's not going to have the same feeling. But go ahead and we'll tighten that down. Obviously, once we do that, we're going to get our plug wire put into place on that, and then we'll move into installing our propeller. There's going to be a spacer here, slide on, and we have all our bolts. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that there's some options on propellers through Power2fly that you can go with some other different options. We chose the Helix prop. We've had some other props as well as the Helix, and the Helix seems to be our favorite. This is a 140 size propeller as compared to the 130 Helix that we're running on the standard Titan. And do keep in mind, this is a Titan XL, and we'll show you when we get done here, comparing them side by side, that this is a much larger unit, and this gear reduction is going to be different to spin this larger propeller. So Jacob's got the spacer, he's got the prop, and he's got the prop bolts, and he's going to slide it up there and catch those bolts one at a time. And we're going to try to tighten those things evenly. We do not put Loctite on propeller bolts. It's definitely not necessary. And of course, if you want to remove your propeller, we don't want that to be a big ordeal. So he'll tighten these down. There are torque specifications for the propeller, if you would like to look that up through the Vitarazi instruction manual. We use the old German torque method. We make it good and tight and hand tighten them. You definitely don't want them loose, but we're not trying to hold the Golden Gate Bridge down either. And so we'll run these things down, give them a good tightening, and we're making some headway on just about completing this unit. So stay tuned. All right, Jacob's going to grab the tape measure and we're going to pull it from end to end to show you the size of this hoop, because they give it all to you in metric, and I'm going to show you what it is in inches. So we're right at 60.5 inches, so just a tad over 5 foot. And stick it on the end of the prop right there. So for one end of the prop to the next, 55.25. All right, so we walk over here to the standard unit. From one side of the hoop to the next is 57.25 maybe. And the prop is going to be 51.75 on the prop. So you can definitely tell the size difference in that, as well as the fact that this has a different gear reduction on it to spin the larger prop. And so it definitely produces a lot more thrust. Jacob got the opportunity to fly one and noticed an immediate difference in power output. So he's definitely looking forward to getting this one in the air. So we've got a few more things to do to the unit and to get it airworthy, and hopefully we'll be back with the first flight impressions video to follow. Thanks for watching, and we'll make sure we post up some links on the video for Carolina PPG and also Power2fly, and we'll follow up from there. Have a good one.